appreciate what we will be discussing in the abnormal. So for this discussion, I hope you have already gone through the video to learn what the normal physiology of muscles is, no? So that kapag diniscuss natin ngayon itong pathogenesis ng myasthenia gravis, maintindihan nyo bakit ganoon mag-present yung sakit, no? Or anong nangyayari sa katawan kapag nagkakaroon ng ganitong sakit. So, let's take a closer look first at the term myasthenia gravis, no? So, meron yan siyang root words. My means muscle. Asthenia means weakness. So if you combine those two root words, myasthenia will mean muscle weakness. Okay? And gravis, the term gravis means severe. So kapag pinagsama-sama natin yung mga root words na iyon, ibig sabihin ng myasthenia gravis ay severe muscle weakness. Okay? So, malalaman natin this morning how that severe muscle weakness occurs. So first, you have to appreciate, so know from this point forward, na ang myasthenia gravis ay isang autoimmune disorder. So, pag nakita nyo yung term or nabasa nyo yung term na autoimmune, ibig sabihin nun, auto, A-U-T-O, auto means self. And immunity is the process of removing or eliminating foreigners or unwanted substances from the body by way of the immune system. So, uulitin ko. Immunity ay ang process by which the immune system removes unwanted material or cells from the body. So, be it a pathogen, no, a microbe, or a dead or cancerous cell that is being catered by the immune system. So ngayon, pag sinabi nating autoimmunity, the immune system has a hard time differentiating the self from non-self, no? Hindi niya nalalaman kung yung substance ba na iyon or yung cell ba na iyon ay part of the body or an invader. Kaya hindi niya napipili, pinapatay niya rin pati yung part of the body. Okay, so that is autoimmunity. Ngayon, i-connect natin yung dalawa. Myasthenia gravis or severe muscle weakness is an autoimmune disorder, which means that myasthenia gravis occurs because the immune system has a difficult time understanding if the cell, in particular, the skeletal muscle cell and the neuromuscular junction is part of the self. Okay? So, yun yung nangyayari. So, what happens? You already know, I hope from your STEM classes na yung immune system, no, has two arms. Innate immunity, which relies on white blood cells, the common white blood cells, neutrophils, macrophages, and then barriers. And you have adaptive immunity, which is very specific to the pathogen involved. So, for example, a part of the adaptive immune system is the production of antibodies. So, ibig sabihin nun, antibodies are specific. You have antibodies that specifically neutralize certain pathogens. For example, antibodies to a bacteria called Streptococcus. So, yung antibodies na yun, Streptococcus lang yung papatayin niya. Okay? So, another part of the adaptive immune system would be the T lymphocytes. So, yun naman, cell-to-cell yung interaction. Papatayin niya on a cellular basis yung organism. Okay, so dito, the adaptive immune system is in play. In particular, antibodies. So, gumagawa ang katawan ng antibodies against the cell membrane of skeletal muscle cells. So, if you have IgG autoantibodies against the skeletal muscle cell membrane, ano mangyayari sa skeletal muscle? Yung cell membrane niya magiging kulubot, no? Magiging pangit. And so, kapag pumangit yung cell membrane ng skeletal muscle, mahihirapan na siyang mag-contract. And in particular, if the cell membrane gets injured, the presence of acetylcholine receptors in the cell membrane also become affected. So kung ang iyong cell membrane ay normal, pag-annotate ba ako dito? If the cell membrane is normal, the distances and the appearance of acetylcholine receptors are optimized for muscular contraction. So, kailangan yung maintindihan na yung acetylcholine receptors, siya yung nagpapataas eventually ng calcium sa loob ng skeletal muscle cell. And remember in our lecture na yung calcium, yun yung nagkukos ng contraction of the proteins of the skeletal muscle cell. So anong connection nun? If calcium increases, muscular contraction occurs. And acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter released by neurons, binds to skeletal muscles, and that binding of acetylcholine to its receptor is what increases the calcium. So, connect natin yung dots. Ngayon, meron kang antibodies, sinira niya yung cell membrane ng skeletal muscle cell, kaya yung acetylcholine hindi na siya makakadikit sa receptor niya kasi kulubot na yung cell membrane. So without activity of acetylcholine, calcium inside the skeletal muscle cell will not increase. So kapag hindi tataas yung calcium, hindi magkakaroon ng contraction. No? So that's one mechanism. Nagkakaroon ng antibodies against the cell membrane of the skeletal muscle cell. So yun yung nasa left side, 7% of patients. But a more common mechanism would be antibodies that are produced specifically against the acetylcholine receptor. Okay? So, sabi nga natin kanina, acetylcholine is released by the neuron. And acetylcholine is kumbaga detected by the skeletal muscle through acetylcholine receptors. And only when the acetylcholine receptors become activated, kailan sila na-activate? Kapag nag-release na ang neuron ng acetylcholine. Kapag na-activate na ang acetylcholine receptors, tataas yung calcium, magkakaroon ngayon ng contraction. So, isang mechanism ng myasthenia gravis ay gumagawa ang katawan ng abnormal na antibodies at sila ay didikit doon sa acetylcholine receptor. Kanina, magkaiba kasi yung antibodies sisirain niya ngayon yung cell membrane. This time, there are antibodies that are produced that directly interfere and destroy the acetylcholine receptor mismo. No? So, think of it this way. Acetylcholine, para yan siyang kotse. And then, yung receptor, parang space sa parking lot. So, yun yung parking space niya. Para maging active, yung acetylcholine receptor, dapat pumasok yung acetylcholine doon. So, kung sa parking space, no, na analogy natin, magiging occupied yung parking space kapag papasok doon yung kotse. So, in myasthenia gravis, there are antibodies that will occupy yung space na yun, yung parking space, so that hindi na ngayon makakapasok yung actual acetylcholine. Kasi may nagpark na sa space niya. So kung ganun yung nangyayari, acetylcholine will not be able to bind to the acetylcholine receptor, and therefore you will not produce an increase in calcium inside the cell. And kung walang increase in calcium, skeletal muscle cell contraction will not occur. No? So yan yung first mechanism, no? Blockade of acetylcholine binding site on the acetylcholine receptor. Next, the antibodies produced in myasthenia gravis specifically attach to the acetylcholine receptor and cause the destruction of the acetylcholine receptor. So ngayon, ito, iba naman. Yung kanina, dumikit siya sa acetylcholine receptor at pinigilan niya yung acetylcholine from acting on the receptor. This time, dumikit yung antibody sa acetylcholine receptor and it destroyed the acetylcholine receptor. So all of those, no? Yung sisirain ng antibodies, yung cell membrane ng skeletal muscle, yung pagdikit ng antibodies sa acetylcholine receptor so that acetylcholine will not be able to bind, and yung pagdikit ng acetylcholine ng antibodies to the acetylcholine receptor causing destruction of the acetylcholine receptor, all will produce a decrease in acetylcholine receptor function. So ano nga yung function ulit? Paulit-ulit na to ha, pang 10 na yatang sinabi ko to. Acetylcholine will cause the skeletal muscle to be positive and increase its levels of calcium, leading to muscular contraction. So, ngayon, bumaba na yung activity of the acetylcholine receptor. What will be the effect? No? So, malalaman ng neuron na hindi masyadong gumagana yung acetylcholine receptor. Malalaman niya yun. So, anong gagawin niya? The neuron will then compensate by increasing the release of acetylcholine at the synapse. So, kung ma-detect niya na hindi gumagana yung acetylcholine kasi sira nga yung acetylcholine receptor, ang gagawin ng neuron, magre-release siya ng mas maraming acetylcholine. However, because the stores of acetylcholine is only limited, ibig sabihin, kung ang neuron ay alkansya at dahan-dahan mong kinukuha yung loob niyang coins, eventually mauubos yung loob ng alkansya, no? So, if ganon yung nangyari sa neuron, release siya ng acetylcholine, eventually kukonte or mauubos yung acetylcholine na hawak-hawak ng neuron. And that will lead to progressive decrease in acetylcholine release at the neuromuscular junction. Sa simula, sobrang dami niyang nire-release kasi hindi nga gumagana, di ba? Yung acetylcholine sa receptor niya. Eventually, mauubos or magsuslow down yung release niya. And that will lead to a decrease in the response of skeletal muscle to acetylcholine signaling. Kapag yun ang nangyari, muscle contraction progressively becomes weaker. Okay? So manghihina na ngayon yung skeletal muscles. And direct your attention to the right side ng mga green na nasa kanan. The effect of that would be painless weakness of skeletal muscle. Kasi yung skeletal muscle, pwede din siyang maging mahina or weak during inflammation. Kapag namamaga yung skeletal muscle, manghihina din siya. But if that is the case, masakit yon. In myasthenia gravis, which is the autoimmune disorder, unique. Kasi manghihina ang skeletal muscle pero hindi siya masakit. Kasi wala namang pamamaga, no, sa skeletal muscle mismo. So ano-ano yung mga muscles na manghihina? First would be ocular and extraocular muscles. I think you know already, no? Or if this is your first time, you should know from this point onwards na yung mata natin, mayroong muscles na nagko-control kung saan siya titingin, no? The left and the right eyeball will have muscles that will contract um, in parang coordinated yung contraction ng muscles ng dalawang eyeball. So that, for example, kung ikaw ay titingin sa kanan, the right eyeball will look to the right and the left eyeball will also look to the right. So dapat sabay silang dalawa. And that is due to coordinated contraction of the extraocular muscles. Okay? Ngayon, kung meron kang myasthenia gravis, those muscles that coordinate the contraction so that you have the same eyes looking at you have two eyes looking at the same object, manghihina yung mga muscle na yun. So ano mangyayari? Yung isang eyeball nakatingin sa kanan, tapos yung isang eyeball hindi masyadong nakatingin sa kanan kasi nanghina. So ano mangyayari? The eyeballs will receive different light signals, no? So nakatutok sila sa magkaibang objects. And that will manifest as double vision or diplopia, no? Diplopia means double vision. So another manifestation of myasthenia gravis, which is common, no? They have ptosis. So ano ibig sabihin ng ptosis? Diba your eyelids open and that will make you appear as if you are awake, no? Dilat yung mata. So the eyelids open because a muscle is pulling on the eyelid. Right now, if you have myasthenia gravis, the muscles that pull on the eyelid also become weak. Manghihina din yung muscle na yun. So kapag nanghina yung muscle na yun, what will be the effect? The eyelid will start to droop. Babagsak yung eyelid as if hindi gising yung patient, no? Or as if half awake lang siya. Hindi siya totally awake. So that manifestation is what we call ptosis. P-T-O-S-I-S. Next, if the muscles in the mouth and in the throat become weak because of myasthenia gravis, it will manifest as dysarthria or difficulty talking, no? Dysarthria is difficulty talking. So yun kapag nanghina yung muscles of the mouth. But if the muscles of the throat become weak, what will be the manifestation? You will have difficulty swallowing or dysphagia. Okay? So that will be the effect if the muscles of the mouth and the throat become weak because of myasthenia gravis. Next, the limbs, the arms and the legs can also become weak. But in myasthenia gravis, mas pinipili niyang maging mahina yung arm kaysa sa leg. So you will have weakness of the arm more than the leg. Okay? Next, the neck muscles can also become weak. In particular, yung nasa batok ninyo. No? The muscles of the neck yung nasa batok, the extensor muscles, become weak. And so, if the muscles na nasa batok ninyo ay magiging mahina, your head will drop towards your chest. No? So, that is a unique manifestation of myasthenia gravis. It will selectively affect the neck muscles, the extensor neck muscles. So your head will drop towards your chest. And the most important and the most critical muscles that are affected when you have myasthenia gravis would be the muscles involved in respiration. For example, the muscle called the diaphragm, or the muscle that is in between the rib bones, the intercostal muscles. So, anong mangyayari? Pag nanghina yung mga muscles na iyon, hindi na makakapag-inhale ang patient. No? So, if the patient will not be able to breathe, the patient will suffer from respiratory insufficiency. Hindi siya makakahinga. And if the patient cannot breathe, the patient will die. So, most of the time, if the myasthenia gravis is not controlled by medications, these medications will dampen or weaken the immune system. If hindi siya makontrol ng mga gamot na yun, patients will have respiratory insufficiency and they will die from the myasthenia gravis. Okay? Excuse me. And that will be the most common cause of death of patients with myasthenia gravis. No? So, if that happens, whenever the skeletal muscles controlling respiration or breathing is already affected, dapat mabilis, no? So magbibigay ang mga doktor ng gamot that will neutralize the antibodies immediately. Those medications are based on the weight of the patient. So kung malaki yung patient, mas marami yung kailangan niya ng gamot na yun. So the patient can spend as much as 2 to 3 million pesos for that medication to neutralize the antibodies. So ang tawag natin doon ay intravenous immunoglobulin, IVIG. So those will neutralize the antibodies and hopefully remove the antibodies that have occupied the acetylcholine receptor so that the patient can breathe and move again. Okay? So let's summarize. Myasthenia gravis is severe muscle weakness. And this is due to autoimmunity, the body attacking itself. How? By making antibodies. So, the antibodies, these are proteins in the blood, will bind to the cell membrane of the skeletal muscle cell and destroy the skeletal muscle cell membrane. It will also bind to the acetylcholine receptors and prevent acetylcholine from binding to its receptor. At the same time, binding to its receptor will destroy the receptor itself. All of these will decrease acetylcholine receptor function. Kapag nasira na yung acetylcholine receptor, magpapanik yung neuron. No? The neuron will release more and more acetylcholine kasi bumababa yung function sa receptor. So, pag mabilisan niyang i-release yung acetylcholine, what will be the effect? The neuron will have its acetylcholine depleted, mauubos. And that will lead to a decrease in acetylcholine release later on and decreased response of skeletal muscle, leading to weakness. And what can weaken? The smaller muscles of the body, example, the muscles of the eye, the muscles in the mouth and the throat, the limb, in particular, the arm more than the leg, the neck muscles causing your head to droop or fall towards your chest, And most importantly, in the cause of death, respiratory muscle paralysis, which will lead to insufficiency. The patient cannot breathe and the patient will die. Okay? So, we're done. Do you have questions with the main lesson and our discussion this morning? Again, do you have questions?
None po, Doc, for now. Ay, may
Excuse me, sir. Unsay kanang first signs of symptoms sa myasthenia gravis, sir?
Oftentimes, the first sign would be ptosis, yung hindi na-open ng maayos yung eyelids.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, Stephanie?
Ay, sir, sorry po, sir, napindot lang.
Okay, one more question. Okay, if you don't have question, let me take your screenshot. Sige, si Fariza.